Shrek 2 has got to be the pinnacle of DreamWorks' entire filmography. And I know that's a very big call. They have had some absolute bangers over the years. They have classics like The Prince of Egypt, long-lasting and popular franchises like Kung Fu Panda. Oh, love me some Kung Fu Panda. And then underrated and underappreciated gems like Megamind, the original film, not the sequel and TV show of dubious quality. Ugh. But that being said, I think for many people, particularly those who grew up through the 2000s, what do we even call that decade? The noughties? Ugh, the noughties. The 2000s, anyway. For those that grew up through that era, and thus saw the DreamWorks golden age in my opinion, where their most iconic franchises all got their start, I think that Shrek's probably the franchise that really comes to mind the most. The one that you can look to as their all-time great in terms of DreamWorks content. Now, I think it's clear that at some point along the line, the quality of the Shrek films did dip significantly. Not judging anybody who thinks Shrek the Third or Shrek Forever After are the best films in that franchise. But for me, there's an obvious decline. And I do think there is this perception that Shrek 1 is by far the best and potentially the only really good one, that Shrek 2 is worse, and so on and so forth. But I really just want to challenge that perception. Hell, I'm looking at the Rotten Tomatoes over here, and it has a 69% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes, and an 89% critical score. But yeah, that audience score, what the hell? That's way too low to me. I mean, what's going on here, everybody? It can't just be me who's astounded at this, can it?
Am I so out of touch?
I mean, it did gross $935 million off a budget of $150 million, that's true, so it did get that sort of success, but it still deserves more love. I'm an unapologetic fanboy of this movie. It is the best Shrek film. It is the absolute peak of DreamWorks, and I'm tired of pretending like it's not. And so I guess there's nothing else for it but to gush about the film. Let's begin. So I do say this quite often, but really, it does hold up. It's my old faithful way of judging an animated film. You have the three main categories you want to be looking at. You have the major scripting elements, so that's your narrative, your characters, your dialogue, your jokes. Then you have the audio elements, the voice acting quality, the music and score. And then you have your visuals too. Story is probably the biggest category to tackle this time around, so we'll start with the visuals and then audio. In terms of your visuals, I think for a film that was released in 2004, it looks very good. Obviously, it doesn't hold up to a lot of the more modern animated films from major studios like Disney, Pixar, Illumination, and DreamWorks, but for the time, I think it looks very good. I love the designs, the design choices they made, especially the interior of the Fairy Godmother factory and then just far, far away in general. Loved how they leaned into that fusion of modern America with an emphasis on places like LA, but with a Renaissance fairy tale sort of vibe. Like they did it a bit with Duloc in the first film, mostly as a bit of a spoof on Disneyland, but here I felt like they took it up a couple of notches, and it really works. I think my favourite part of this is when they go to the Friar Fat Boy drive-thru. Gave me a good giggle. I found it very clever. And I think they just find that sweet spot of just enough. It gets to be too much with Shrek the Third when there's like a full-on medieval high school. Not sure what they were thinking with that movie, if I'm being perfectly honest. But yeah, the visual's very good. The film looks fun and vibrant and exciting. Cool design choices, modern, fused with fantasy. The animation quality is good for the time, so a big check in that box. Then music. My god, the music for this film. It's off the charts. I need a hero. That's all you need to say. I need a hero. But there's so much more. Like, obviously, I Need a Hero with the Fairy Godmother is a classic. But there's Accidentally in Love, Changes, Ever Fallen in Love, Livin' La Vida Loca. My god, so many good covers.
The competition hasn't even started yet.
I can't help being judgmental. It's who I am.
And I think Accidentally in Love was actually straight up written for this movie. Oh, what a banger soundtrack. Shrek knows what's up. And then on top of that, a voice cast that puts out a classic performance. Mike Myers, Eddie Murphy, Cameron Diaz, John Cleese, Julie Andrews, Antonio Banderas, Rupert Everett, Jennifer Saunders. My god, what a cast! It's just legendary. Can't think of a single bad or phoned in performance. And then there's all the minor characters with really iconic voices. They just let you buy into everything. It's beautiful. And so now there's nothing else for it but the narrative. Let's get going, because it's just a banger film. Okay, so the film begins similarly to the first one, with narration over the storybook. It's still giving a parody of those classic Disney Golden Age films. And instantly it's jumping into one of the best sequences of the entire film. They're starting strong, as Prince Charming braves countless dangers on a great quest to win the heart of Princess Fiona, only to find that for some reason, the big bad wolf has moved into the castle and is reading bikini magazines featuring pigs. And he's also eating pork. Armie Hammer vibes. My god. This scene was everywhere on the old Shrek 2 ads when I was a kid, and it remains extremely funny. And just such a great way to start the film. And from here we kick into high gear with the Accidentally in Love soundtrack as we get to see their honeymoon, beating up random angry peasants, Shrek making out with Ariel, who's then murdered by Fiona. They forge the one ring, they fart, and they keep farting. They traumatize Little Red Riding Hood and pretty much just have the fairy tale honeymoon. Okay, so that's two classic and iconic sequences back to back. Back to back. And it all comes crashing back down to earth when they arrive home to find Donkey in their place, being lovely and annoying. And man, it's so weird watching this as an adult. As a kid, I found Donkey hilarious. I thought he was the best character and that Shrek was way too mean, but as an adult, now I find it funny to see Shrek suffer. Because it would be so deeply annoying if you come back from a long trip eager to rest, and there's somebody house sitting against your will who won't get the picture and go away. And that's where the comedy comes for the adults. Because Donkey is so ridiculously annoying. And you can see it. And here is where the plot really starts to take off. We get the proper story. Shrek and Fiona find themselves invited to a royal ball hosted by the king and queen of Far, Far Away, Fiona's parents. And so after a brief argument that Shrek loses to Fiona about whether they should even bother attending the ball, after all, they are ogres, which was the curse that her parents locked her up to keep hidden from the entire world, off they go on the great journey, where once again I just really sympathise with Shrek. Donkey, mate, come on. I mean, look at his face. He knows what he's doing. He is trying to make Shrek angry on purpose. Then they arrive in Far, Far Away and Funky Town kicks in. Man, I'd forgotten about this song and sequence. Isn't this awesome? And I gotta say, this ad for the fairy godmother feels very suggestive. Guess they probably felt like they couldn't get away with putting "for all your happy endings" on the sign. They pull up at the palace and we get some lovely, lovely cringe. As people panic, birds crash, and everybody is shocked that their prince and princess are ogres. And one of them doesn't even bother to put on nice clothes. Come on, Shrek, you're just wearing your stained shirt, those ugly checkered tights, dilapidated shoes, and your ugly vest. Oh, I wonder why nobody's impressed. You gotta dress for the job you want, son. You married a princess. And the cringe does not let up, as we endure one of the most awkward dinner scenes imaginable. Whenever I watch this scene, I get so hungry. I did as a kid, and I do now. Look at all this food. They're wasting all that food. The pig. Also, has anyone actually ever had a full pig with an apple in its mouth? Is that an actual thing that is served up at some places? I've never seen one. I want one. Also, do you ever reckon that King Harold gets a craving for bugs and flies? Like, he was a frog, right? Spoilers. And surely he does. Surely he needs that sometimes. And yeah, the dinner all goes to shit. Fiona runs off, because honestly, it is a bit absurd that they couldn't even go through one dinner without getting into a fight. And then out of nowhere, we get Fairy Godmother's debut. And after one of the most out of nowhere songs in the history of the franchise, she gets all shocked when Shrek bursts in and is announced as Fiona's husband. And I do have to wonder, did she not realise this would have been the case? I mean, the king and queen literally sent the marching band to the swamp. Surely the godmother would have heard about this. Surely she would have realised, oh, my son doesn't live in a swamp. Makes no sense. Like, their goal is clearly the throne. Why wouldn't he just bring her straight home? I just don't get how she's so shocked that Fiona's married somebody else. Anyway, she gets chased off, and we get one of my favourite donkey moments in the entire film. It's just glorious.
I'm an ogre! Ah!
So Shrek feels like shit, and it's revealed that the king and queen have heard the entire fight, and Harold is now in the doghouse, as he should be, before he gets snatched by the fairy godmother, who seems to be a godmother in more ways than one. And there's an excellent fake-out joke where he thinks he's about to get whacked, and it's revealed that instead, she's breaking her diet to order fryer fat boys. I've been there, fairy godmother, I've been there. Harold's told to deal with Shrek, and so he hires a hitman from a shady pub, although I have to wonder, why doesn't he try to disguise himself at all? He just puts on a hood and thinks that'll be enough, and he gets recognised instantly. Surely as a king you'd have trusted men you can send out to do your dirty work. Otherwise, what is the point? Also, I loved how the frog woman recognises him, but it gets played off to the audience as if she just recognises him as the king. But really, it's because she remembers his frog self. And I actually thought this was really quite clever. And the scene before that, with him and the queen, they talk about how they had their first kiss down by the lily pond, and that lilies were in bloom. And in the Frog Prince fairy tale, the frog gets kissed by the woman, he becomes a real man again. So pretty much they had their first date at his house. And that's all the stuff you just miss on that first watch, but makes so much sense the second time. I think it's quite clever. I like how they layered it throughout the film like that. And so then it's back to Shrek, who over the course of yet another excellent musical sequence, man, musical sequences and Shrek, name a more iconic duo. They don't make them like this anymore, I tell you what. They managed to turn this scene where Shrek is stuck in a little girl-sized bed, staring up at a poster of Justin Timberlake and getting jealous and upset that as a little girl, Fiona wanted to marry Prince Charming. They managed to turn that into an emotional scene where he questions his worth as a husband to Fiona and whether she'd be better off without him. That's something that I think this film does better than most Shrek films. They really nail the emotional element of him being an ogre and not feeling like he fits in with this family. He and Harold then try to make peace and make plans to meet by the Old Oak at 7:30 to go on a father-son hunt in order to bond. and instead he's confronted by Puss in Boots, who reveals he's been hired by the king to murder Shrek. And this scene, I keep saying it, but yet another classic. And it's really funny. They have this big build-up of Puss whooping Shrek and Donkey, and then you get ready for the big rumble, and he instantly loses because he has to cough off a furball. And then he convinces Shrek to let him come with them with his cutesy face. And this cutesy face, it has to be one of the most iconic moments in animated history. Look at this. This was in all the ads, on the posters. This level of cuteness still has never been topped for me. And then it's off to the fairy godmother's factory, which, yeah, this is yet another excellent scene. And where we finally get some classic Shrek action, which has honestly been somewhat lacking from the film so far. We're almost an hour in and we've only really had that brief fight with Puss, and that wasn't really much. But in the OG, we already had the Duloc Night tournament by this point, and we're well on the way to getting the dragon battle at the Lava Castle, so the pacing is a bit slower here. I think the film does make up for it with some funny scenes and lots of jokes and whatnot, but you also want to see some frantic action, so this was a welcome arrival, and the crux of the scene is that Fairy Godmother sends Shrek away as ogres don't deserve or get happy endings, and so they steal a happily ever after potion and trash the facility, whilst the Fairy Godmother decides to use the potion that they chose to her advantage and hatches a new plan. Donkey and Shrek then drink the potion, and off we go. We get human Shrek, who is very handsome, and Stallion Donkey. And I always wondered, what did Dragon turn into? Yeah, this is yet another classic sequence, by the way. I know, stop saying classic. The film just oozes nostalgia. There are very, very few boring or forgettable scenes in this entire film. Realistically, probably only the scenes where we flash back to Fiona and her parents are the ones that I consider not as necessary, because we want to keep following Shrek and Donkey. The flashes to Lord Farquaad, where it's just him, worked better in the first film because they were very brief and were ultimately just really, really ridiculous. But yeah, when they cut to Fiona and her parents, it's just not as interesting as watching Shrek, and they linger a little too long. I get why they have them, because Fiona is too important to not have her appear for ages at a time, but still, it's just not as fun. And here, we sort of hit the second act of the film, which is where the film really picks up steam and becomes undeniably the best of the franchise. We have Shrek meeting the milkmaids, it's a far more mature scene than I remember it being as a kid. Maybe I was just very innocent. I'll be true enough. Yikes! Then Shrek and co steal those friendly nobles' clothes and then they turn up at the castle. We have a song montage, changes, a banger, a great scene. Shrek then leaves and is all downtrodden because he thinks that Charming would be better off with Fiona, and that Fiona would be happier without him, only to find out it was all a setup and they're planning on drugging her to fall in love with Prince Charming. And this leads into a chase scene and one of the best scenes in the whole movie, with the best jokes. There's the red carpet event, which then goes into a Cops parody, Knights, complete with a drug bust of catnip, using crossbows as guns, and then pepper spray is a ground pepper shaker. Whoever thought of that joke is a genius. And on top of that, the police helicopters are police hot air balloons. Oh. And then all the fairy tale friends are watching this, so they all go and bust him out of prison. Although I do have to wonder, how were they able to get to far, far away so quickly? It was nighttime when they were watching that, and then it was nighttime when they arrived, but it's like 1,000 miles away, isn't it? Oh well, maybe they flew on Dragon, I don't know. We also learned that for some reason, Pinocchio wears women's underwear. A thong, in fact. How did they get away with all these jokes? They're borderline lewd. And some of them aren't even borderline. You know, considering how many wacko parents fly off the handle these days at the most minor of infractions, have the times simply changed? Or is this new generation of parents 20 years later just way softer? I honestly don't know. And so they get out of prison and go to the Muffin Man to create Mongo, a giant gingerbread man. And here we come to the best sequence in Shrek history. I know I keep saying this kind of thing, but it's I Need a Hero. It has everything. Jokes, tragedy with the death of Mongo. Oh, Mongo! I do like to think that they fished him out of the moat and somehow saved his life, but, you know, we never see him again, so I think he's dead. It just has everything you could want, you know, and also great singing. Ah, my childhood, my childhood! And then the finale where they all team up to fight Fairy Godmother. Harold sacrifices himself after revealing he'd betrayed her. And then she dies and he's a frog and it's Livin' La Vida Loca, baby! Another banger! Another contender for being the best song in the film. Best song in the franchise, really. Seriously, you look at this film, how can you give it such a low score? How can so many dislike it? 69%? Kiss my ass! This film is a classic, the best of Shrek in my eyes, and I won't hear a word otherwise. Damn it. I don't even care. That's it. I have to go sit down because I'm getting too angry. I'm getting too angry at this slanderous bullshit. Farewell. And so I'll remind you that these have all been my opinions, and now I'd like to hear yours. What do you think of Shrek 2? Did you like it? Are you based like that? Or are you an idiot? Fess up. I'm curious for your thoughts, so make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know.